Yo, what's up guys, Gray here, and today we're going to be going through all the Pokemon that didn't return in Pokemon Sword and Shield and ranking them as to where I believe they will be in Draft League. If they were to be in the game, say they randomly just decided to throw all these Pokemon back in tomorrow, this would be basically where I think they would stand in Draft League. To preface this, we're going to be going off of just the original movesets, so none of the data mined moves, because as evident by the Crown Tundra DLC, not all the data mine moves would be correct, as the Tapus completely got screwed out of it, namely Koko and Bulu. And so I don't believe that those moves would all be correct. I know things like Gliscor got Power Whip, Typhlosion got Scorching Sands. Like, there's a strong chance they'll probably get those moves, but at the same time, I don't want to go off the data mine when it's been known to be wrong in the past. So going off the basically Gen 7 moves, Gen 7 abilities, I don't think they would change any, but just on the off chance they would, we're going off of that as well. So also, I did record this video before, and it was firstly nearly 2 hours long, and that was way too long for me to really make a video. Sorry, my chair just fell down a little bit, so I had to rearrange. It was way too long, so I decided to re-record this, and as you can see, Unknown is already in the bottom tier because Unknown is not a Pokemon anymore. Hidden Power is taken out of the game. It only loads Hidden Power, so it's in the bottom tier 5, which has been split into two tiers because basically tier 5 is two tiers within itself. You got the ones that are completely just terrible mons. They don't really have anything they can do or contribute to a team. And then you got some tier 5s that actually are pretty decent. Things like tier 5s I've used in the past: Pinsir, Greedent, Mawile in my BBR draft currently. You've got Clefairy in my UPA draft. In the past I've used Machoke as well, which I actually got some use out of in APA Academy. So there's definitely some tier 5s that have good use and could actually be picked up. There is also tier 5s that are completely just worthless effectively. So let's get straight into this. And first up we've got Beedrill, and Beedrill, I would have to put it in the bottom tier. It only really learns Toxic Spikes to have any kind of use. Outside that, it's just really bad. Same with Pidgeot. Pidgeot I'd love to be great, but it's got poor stats and terrible abilities. Raticate I think is a first tier 5. I think actually both of them can go into this tier. Well, it could actually have some use. Raticate getting Guts plus Swords Dance, and it's a normal type in Gen 1, so it gets tons of coverage. And also, Lodon Raticate Dark Normal is actually really good coverage. As seen by Obstagoon, effectively this is just like a weaker Obstagoon without having the bulk as well. It's very frail, it's not as quick, but it's not so bad that it's basically useless. Fearow, however, that's going into the useless tier because it really doesn't do a lot. It's just a normal flying type with a decent speed stat, I'll admit, and I guess usable attack stat. It's still just, it's not good. There's much better normal flyings out there. Arbok definitely has its use. Intimidate plus Glare, things like Coil as well. It can do some work. I've seen Arbok be used to great effect in a couple of leagues. It does tend to get drafted in tier 5 in some of the national dex leagues that I've seen, because it does have some use. Parasect, unfortunately, is going to go into the useless tier. That effectively is just Spore is the only thing it's good at. Outside of that, it really doesn't have any use. Finally, we've got a Pokemon that I think is actually pretty good, and that is Venomoth. Venomoth gets Quiver Dance, it gets Toxic Spikes, it gets Tinted Lens as well, which means that it's able to hit for neutral damage even if it's weak to something. Weak to something if it doesn't hit something super effectively, or neutral, not very effectively. Jeez, get my words out here. Venomoth can hit anything that's not very effective for neutral damage. With Tinted Lens, if you didn't know, and its coverage is decent enough. Bug, Poison, Psychic tends to be enough to be able to hit everything for good damage, especially with Quiver Dance. It does get reliable recovery with Roost, but outside of that, Venomoth is it's a little bit frail. Its stats aren't amazing, but it is a pretty decent mon. It was better in Gen 7, I think, with Z moves. Potentially you'll see us in tier 4. But I'd go put it like on the low end of tier 3. I don't know if it'll get drafted too much in tier 3. But I'm going to put it in there for now. Primeape I think is a solid tier 4. It's got a decent speed stat, great coverage, good choice Scarfer, and also a Intimidate deterrent because for the ability Defiant. Outside of that, not necessarily a whole lot to it. Its attack stat is pretty decent, so you mainly see it's like a Scarf kind of pivot Pokemon. It's effectively like a weaker Persimmon. Victory Bell, I think, is probably still tier 5, but actually has some pretty good use, especially on a Sun team. This is like a budget Venusaur. Without like Earth Power and Weather Ball, it does get access to good moves on physical and special side, as well as the stats actually being pretty decent on its attacks. Base 70 speed is still usable in the Sun, but outside of Sun, it really doesn't have any use at all. It's not a great Pokemon at all. Gets growth to be good on the special attacking side and physical attacking if you want to run like a mixed set. And does also get Swords Dance, so you can run like Solar Blade, Poison Jab, and Knockoff with Swords Dance. And in Sun, it can be quite a big threat. It can actually be really good. Golem, I think, has some use. I'm going to put it in the top of the 2 tiers because it's a decent rocker. It's dual stabs on both of them. Dual stabs are pretty good. As seen by like things like Rhyperior, Rock Ground is actually a really good typing. And it does get access to things like Rock Polish. You could run a Rock Polish set, but Golem is mainly kind of like a bulkier defensive mon with decent attack stat. I think actually it's 120 attack, pretty decent, but it's still worse than like Rhydon, and Rhydon isn't even a fully evolved Pokemon. So Golem is alright. Alolan Golem gets access to Galvanize, which means you can have like Galvanize boosted Explosion, but outside of that, it's really not doing a whole lot more that regular Golem would do. Its dual stabs are still pretty decent, but it's then times 4 weak to ground, whilst Golem has the water and grass, 4 times weakness. Golem's just not going to be that great, but it's a tier 5. There's some games that will actually have some use it could actually come to. Dodrio, I think, is like a solid tier 4. It's basically a much better Fearow. 110 attack and 110 speed means that it's actually got a good speed stat and a very usable attack stat, especially if you're running like Choice Banded. Stabs being like Double Edge and Brave Bird, because Return being taken out of the game means that it would probably be forced to run that. I think it might get access to Body Slam, which could also be used, but you're most likely going to be seeing like Double Edge, Brave Bird, Jump Kick, and I think it gets U-Turn as well. So like for a choice set, it's pretty decent. Very much would like to see it drafted in Draft League. I'd very rarely see it drafted, but I think you could put in some work. Dugong, absolutely, that is going in the useless tier. I don't actually see any upsides to it at all. It's relatively bulky, I think, is the only thing. It doesn't have much attack, so it can't do much with it. But yeah, Dugong just kind of exists. Unless it gets something good in this gen, then it will remain there. Muck, I think, is a very usable tier 5. It's very specially bulky with a good attack stat, makes it a good AV user. Gets tons of coverage because it's Gen 1 Pokemon, and it gets like all elemental punches, it gets Shadow Sneak, it gets access to fighting coverage as well. So certainly Muck has its uses in tier 5. I think it's one of the better picks here. Alolan Muck is a tier 3 in my opinion. Though the Gluttony, the 50% berries even getting nerfed a little bit this gen, I still think that Muck is really good. Mainly as an Assault Vest user, I think that's probably its niche now. Poison Dark even is a really good typing because it's only weak to ground. And yeah, it's got the same coverage as Muck, plus having Stab Knockoff. And yeah, that's just a really nice ability to have, effectively. Just having Stab Knockoff and 1 weakness, especially with its special defense. Like, it's able to take ground point moves on special side just fine, especially with the Assault Vest. So Muck is a really good bulky Pokemon. I'd say it's better than the current Dark Poisons we've got, being Skuntank and Drapion. So I think it sits nicely in tier 3. Hypno is terrible. I drafted it once and traded it away immediately because it was awful. It had no matchup against anything. Electrode, honestly, I'm going to put it in the basically useless tier, but it's probably towards the top end of it because you can run like a dual screen set with the explosion off that base like 50 attack. I don't think that Electrode is all that great, but its speed stat being 150 does mean that it can be a good dual screener. Meganium, I don't think is completely useless. It's a decently bulky Pokemon that does have access to like good cleric options, and I think it has access to dual screens as well, so it could be used in that sense. As attack is not so bad that it's completely passive, but at the same time it's not got a lot going for it. I think it's like towards the bottom end of this section of tier 5, but it still can have some use. Typhlosion, I think, is a tier 4. Good Choice Scarfer with Choice Scarfer option. The removal of Hidden Power means that it's now literally just sitting with fire type moves on the special side. But as long as they don't have a great fire type switch in, then Scarfer option still does a lot of damage. It can run Fire Blast, and I mean, at this point, running Fire Blast, Flamethrower, and probably Lava Bloom to get all the fire coverage, to hit, to burn, to do damage. I don't know. It's only got fire moves at this point, so Typhlosion, albeit probably towards the bottom end now, tier 4. I think it still can put in some work. If it gets Scorching Sands, then it's going to be really good, I think, in this gen, or it's going to be better in this gen, depending on what coverage it gets, really. Croconaw, I actually think Croconaw has got some pretty good use. It still gets access to Sheer Force, I believe. Yeah, it still gets access to Sheer Force, and for a tier 5, it can be a pretty good Dragon Dance sweeper. Nothing incredible. I think it's just kind of a really budget Dragon Dance sweeper, much like things like Fracture, and I think Fracture is better. But Croconaw can definitely have some use. In fact, I could put it down one. I think it's probably towards the top end of this. It's not completely useless. I'm going to put it back. Next up, we got Feraligatr, and Feraligatr is definitely a tier 3. Sheer Force boosted, Waterfalls, Ice Punches. Probably going to have access to things like Close Combat, Play Rough in this gen. Obviously, I'm not going off of that, but even in Gen 7, it was always in tier 3 because Sheer Force, Dragon Dance boosted, like Waterfalls, hits super, super hard. Not to mention its special attack is actually pretty usable at 79. You can run like Scald, Ice Beam, Focus Blast with agility, and I actually really enjoyed using that set because the special attack is around the same as like Nidoking and Nidoqueen, and you've seen what they do with Sheer Force. Granted, they have better coverage, but certainly a special attack is usable enough with those moveset, that moveset, to be able to hit quite a few things, and nobody really expects a special for Alligator. Not to mention it gets access to priority moves like Aqua Jet as well. So yeah, Feraligatr is really, really solid. Furret, sorry, and Ledian, you're both just terrible. You don't really do a lot. Ariados, I think, has some use, unlike Beedrill. It's the same type, but it does get access to Sticky Web, I believe, as well as the Toxic Spike. So it has some use. It has a better attack stat, I think, than Beedrill as well, base 90. Honestly, outside of that, it doesn't do a whole lot more than Beedrill, but the fact that it has more forms of hazards really puts it in a usable tier. Ampharos, I think, is also just in this usable tier 5. And it's got a really good special attack stat at 115. Pretty good bulk at 90 HP and 90 death with 85 defense. Especially with access to Cotton Guard, it can actually set up and be fairly bulky. If it gets access to Body Press, then that'd be real nice, but I think maybe I should do a video of just like things that would make these Pokemon better, or at least somewhat viable. Yeah, I might do that one in the future, but yeah, Ampharos is certainly solid as a tier 5. If you just need an electric type, it can get you a slow Volt switch, but it's a Pokemon that really misses its Mega Evolution, much like Beedrill and Pidgeot. I think its Mega Evolution actually gave it some viability, whilst really it's just kind of stuck in tier 5. I think Jumpluff is probably down. It might even be in the... I'm going to put it here. No, it's not that bad. Speedy Leech Seed with the ability Unburden, I believe. No, sorry, Chlorophyll gets with Infiltrator as well. So honestly, it's not doing a lot of damage, but it can be kind of annoying to deal with. I'm going to put it down a tier. I really don't like Jumpluff. It's basically just fast with not a ton of utility. It's just got enough utility that it's got something of viability, but honestly, that's like really stretching to try and pick up a Jumpluff in a draft. Apom is terrifying in Little Cup, not so great in regular. Sunflora, there's so many, every option is better in the sun. Even Jumpluff is better in the sun, I think, than Sunflora. Actually, I don't think it is. Yumba is actually not entirely useless, but I'm still going to put it down here because it kind of still dies to rocks. It isn't fast or powerful enough to do too much damage, but it's still it's okay. Like, I've seen it drafted and actually do something. Shout out to Trog, that is basically his meme pick. Murkrow, I think, is actually really good. Not quite tier 4 or anything like that, but in tier 5 it gives you Prankster with a ton of utility. Also a pretty good attacking stats in 85 in both attack and special attack. Base 91 speed. Murkrow can be kind of annoying to deal with. but I don't think it's any better than tier 5. I think it's actually really useful for utility. Mischievous, I think, is slightly worse off. It's not terrible. By all means, it's got decent bulk, and a special attack is usable. I just don't think it's good enough to really be pushing into having actual use. Girafarig, I think, would probably be down here as well, though it can actually run like Nasty Plot and Calm Mindset. It's still, I think, just it's not quite doing enough for me to get into the next tier. Fortress, I think, is a solid tier 4. I know many people will say it's tier 3, but really all it gives you is a ton of hazards. Like, it gives you Stealth Rock, Spike, and Toxic Spike, as well as having a Rapid Spinner, which could be really handy in this gen, especially with the speed buff. But I think Fortress, actually, I might put it in tier 3 because no Hidden Power Fire. I think I'll put it at the bottom end of tier 3, just because no Hidden Power Fire in this gen means that it's actually pretty bulky. Do I want to put in that? Yeah, I'll keep it there, but it's like really low end of tier 3 in my opinion. Gligar is better. Gligar, I think, is actually really good this gen. Eviolite, as long as it doesn't get knocked off, which you can always play around, you can always have better knockoff switch-ins. Yeah, Gligar can be really, really annoying to deal with. It's bulkier, technically, than Gliscor, but lacks the Poison Hill recovery, so it's still going to be really good. Only 2 weaknesses, I believe, to Water and Ice, and Hidden Power Ice being taken out of the game is really, really good for it, because it means that it's not going to be hit by random special attacks, and it doesn't have to worry so much about that. But yeah, Gligar, I think, is going to be really good this gen as a bulky, either bulky pivot or like bulky defog, stealth rocker, that kind of thing. Glamble, I think, is actually a solid. Do I think it's tier 4? I think it's probably like top end of tier 5. I don't mean to put it like that. Let's put these in order. Yeah, I think it's like top end of tier 5 for Gramble. It's a really good mon. I think Stab, Play Rough, plus like the coverage of Earthquake, it's enough to really hit the things that it needs to. And then it has Cleric options and Heal Bell. It gets Thunder Wave, and it can also run Quick Feet Set, which can catch people off guard. It can also be Choice Banded. Intimidate, albeit slightly nerfed in this gen, is still a really good ability. So I'm actually going to put it up. I think it's probably in line with these. Ursaring, I think, is probably there as well. Really strong Wall Breaker with Guts Facade and plenty of coverage, because even in Gen 2, they still gave like loads of coverage moves out to normal types, so it has plenty of coverage to abuse. Basically, all it needs Facade in close combat, though. Maybe Shadow Ball, Shadow Claw as well. Or I don't know what Dark type moves, probably gets Crunch to hit the Ghost types, and then you just kind of go to town. One of the like scariest wall breakers, but unfortunately its speed really lets it down. Macargo is just straight up Ubers, like this best choice Scarfer in the game. Broken Pokemon. I'm going to need a drink because Macargo is that good. So, realistically, it's probably tier 5, but I'm going to keep it in Ubers because it's genuinely just broken. Houndoom, I think, is probably in tier 5, sorry, tier 4. I think it's going to be better than Typhlosion this gen, because it does actually have coverage. Dark Pulse plus like Fire Blast and Sludge Bomb tends to be all you need to do to hit, all you really need to hit. It doesn't have amazing coverage. There's a few things that it is checked by. You could run it on Sun with Solar Beam as well, but that's the same for like any fire type really. You can run it on Sun and have access to an extra coverage move, which Typhlosion desperately needs. But outside of that, it gets access to Nasty Plot. That's a decent speed tier, but it's no better than like kind of standard tier 4. Donphan, I would definitely say, is tier 3. Rapid Spin in this gen means that it's actually pretty good. It could end up outspeeding stuff. Also access to Stealth Rock. It's really bulky on the physical side. Could be a good Assault Vest user as well, and also has a really good attack stat that can take advantage of with like a Rock Polish set or a Choice Band set, and actually has like weirdly good coverage with things like Seed Bomb and Ice Shard, so, and Play Rough as well. It has tons of coverage for a just kind of ground type, so it's not bad. It's definitely a good Pokemon. I would say it's arguably one of the best ones currently in that tier. Stantler, you're just kind of useless. Smeargle, you're not quite so useless. Smeargle, I think, is possibly even tier 4, like some people probably put it in there. Its ability to learn any move in the game outside of things like Aura Wheel, which are like Pokemon exclusive. Only they can learn. I know Aura Wheel is one of them. It means that it can be a really, really good Pokemon just for utility, things like Spore to put something to sleep, and then like all the hazards that it can run. You can also run like a Defog or a Rapid Spin variant if you don't have great removal for a game. but outside of that, it's not really doing all too much for you. There's certainly some sets that could be interesting, things like Final Gambit, but outside of that, Smeargle is just kind of a utility mon, and you don't tend to want to pick it up unless you really don't have many options in terms of hazards or hazard removal, and then at which point it actually becomes really handy. Mightyena is terrible, Beautifly terrible, Dustox terrible, Swellow, that's a good Pokemon. Specs Boomburst hits really hard from it. Also going to be physical with Guts, Flame Orb Guts with Facade and Brave Bird. Just kind of lacks that extra coverage on the physical side. Really struggles to be able to break through any kind of steel types or rock types. Whilst on the special side, at least it gets access to Heat Wave, so it can hit the special, can hit these steel types for good damage. Still walled by a rock type, but effectively you just run like Boomburst, Air Slash, or I guess Hurricane. Actually, gets Hurricane now. So Boomburst, Hurricane, Heat Wave, and then like U-turn. You still run like U-turn just to be able to pivot. But really powerful Pokemon, good speed tier. It doesn't hit as hard as Exploud, but it doesn't need to, because its speed tier means that it's pretty much always hitting first when Exploud has to take the hit. Masquerain, I think that's a tier. Where'd it go? There it is. Masquerain is a solid tier 5. Quiver Dance user is pretty good. Intimidate plus Sticky Web, like honestly, it's really good utility for a tier 5. Especially with heavy duty boots this gen, I think it's got much better. And it can actually be really annoying to deal with access to Roost as well, I believe. It can be really annoying because Bug Flying is actually pretty decent coverage, plus Sticky Web, and Quiver Dance can always be a threat. Breloom, I think, is our first tier 2. Great choice bander with Technician, Mach Punch, and Bullet Seed. Also really good as like a really annoying bulky Pokemon with Poison Hill. And the ability to Leech Seed, Protect, Sub, all that sort of stuff, whilst always gaining health back. Gets access to Drain Punch as well, so you can be really annoying with that sort of set. But Breloom is just kind of all-round a pretty good Pokemon, having such strong attack and priority as well. If it gets Grassy Glide in this gen, oh boy, on a grassy like with Rillaboom or something, that could be terrifying. But Breloom is always a pretty good Pokemon without Hidden Power Flying to necessarily worry about. You can definitely use it much more effectively to just kind of pivot around, not pivot around, but to go against things that you know won't have coverage for you. Vigoroth, I think, actually does have some kind of use as a bulky, like Eviolite Pokemon. It can be really annoying. It does get access to Slack Off, I believe. I could be wrong. It would make sense to get access to Slack Off because its pre-evolution is literally called Slack Off. I think Vigoroth is pretty good as a bulky tier 5. I've seen it put in a lot of work. Luxance used it to great effect in PTL, and I think it's actually got some pretty good value in tier 5. Slacking, I'm going to put actually some use on Slacking because I mean nothing takes a hit. Let's be honest, nothing's taking that hit well. You can bring it in, click like Giga Impact or Double Edge or something, or a coverage move, and many things do not live a hit from Slacking. Sure, it's got the worst ability in the game, one of the worst in Truant. It still does a lot of damage, and you can just kind of bring it in and claim a kill. If you just need to pick up one kill in a game that opens something else up, then actually Slacking is not that bad. Hariyama, I actually really rate. I think it's a great Pokemon. As a Assault Vest user, it's really bulky with its big HP stat at 144. Usable attack stat as well, and it gets good coverage. So, as it is with most fighting types, it gets like all the elemental punches. I believe it gets knockoff, it gets earthquake, and it can also use 2 other abilities to great effect. It gets guts and sheer force. Guts is going to be better than sheer force most of the time, just because you can run like a flame orb set, and it does a lot of damage. Hariyama with a flame orb is deceptively strong, and with his bulk, I've seen this thing put in a ton of work in a lot of leagues. Hariyama as a tier 4, I think, is actually really good value, and certainly overlooked in those paths. We don't want to talk about that. Delcatty, just for Luca, I'm going to put it in Ubers. This man almost killed a Tapu Lele with Double Edge from Delcatty, and it can also actually Thunder Wave ground types, so that's another thing it's got going for it. Medicham is a tier 4. I think it's always going to be in tier 4 because it does get access to Pure Power, which is the same as Huge Power for those who don't know, and access to high jump kicks and headbutt and great coverage means that it can actually be a really good choice Scarfer. It can be a decent choice band user as well, But outside of that, it really doesn't have a whole lot of use. It's not bulky enough to be able to take hits. So you're kind of just left with trying to use the pure power ability to its best with like a choice scarf. Plus or Minun, both going to be down here. They are pretty much useless. There's nothing really to say outside of that. Sadly, I think Volby and Illumise are now there. Volby would have been in tier 5 because of Tail Glow, Baton Pass, stuff like that. But now it doesn't even get Tail Glow, so I don't really see too much value. It does get Prankster, so maybe it could be like a Prankster Weather Setter and then Baton Pass into something. But it's not nearly as good as it used to be. Swalot, actually I'm going to put it up here. It's not as bulky as Muck, but I have actually seen this thing put in work. Helmy and PTL put in more than I would like with a Swalot. He actually used it really effectively, mainly with like stockpile swallow sets. But it's honestly the only time I've seen those moves actually being used effectively. Stockpile I've seen on various mons, but to see Swallow and actually put it in work on a Swalot, that was quite something to see. Camerupt I also actually do think has some use. I've used this myself in PTO, and sure, its typing cannot be the best at times, but the solid rock ability really helps it out in that sense, and Fire Ground is actually really nice coverage, especially with access to fighting to rock moves on the side as well. It could be a really decent bulky mon that hits relatively hard as well. I don't think you necessarily want to run it offensively, but as a more defensive mon just to deal with a certain threat on the enemy team, yeah, I think Camerupt definitely has some use. Grumpig, as much as I love it, I don't think it really has any use at all. Spinder, sorry Brandon, but is also going down here. For those who don't know Brandon, Super Salamence 93 loved Spinder in Draft League. You'd always draft it as his 1.1. Cacturne actually has some use with spikes and has a good attack stat and special attack stat. Can be pretty scary as like a choice specs or choice scarf choice band user. Really, I think Banded is better set with access to Sucker Punch. Really doesn't have a whole lot else going for it outside of that, but I think Cacturne has some use. I don't think it's completely terrible. Zangoose is a solid tier 4 with Toxic Boost. It's actually really scary. Priority and Quick Attack plus Facade, Shadow Claw, and Close Combat hits everything it needs to hit, and a decent attack stat with a pretty good speed as well. Sadly, just like I think just about lacking on that speed front. Access to Swords Dance as well. This could be really scary in the right matchup. I always come up against Zangoose and it terrifies me, and then they say, oh, well, it didn't come because it couldn't break through certain things, and it's pretty good. I think it's definitely in tier 4. I don't see it going any lower, but Zangoose can be a big threat on a lot of teams. Seviper is another thing that usually I would think would be useless, but I've seen it actually do a lot with Glare plus Coil, much like Arbok. Doesn't have the Intimidate, but it also has access to Shed Skin, I believe, so it can be a status absorber. It definitely has some use. I think it could actually be pretty decent. Its attack stats are all right, so you can use Coil to some effect, but it's definitely not any higher than tier 5. I definitely think Seviper has some use. Chaos Form, I think, is going to be down here. Kecleon, I see a lot in tier 4. I honestly think it's in tier 5. I'm going to put it in tier 4. It does have access to Stealth Rock. It has Proteum, which is one of the most broken abilities, if not the most broken ability in the game, giving it stab on every move that it uses. It does have good enough coverage to be able to use that, as well as priority with Shadow Sneak, and it can be a pretty good Assault Vest user. I don't think it's that great. I'm not a big fan of it myself, but I think it's going to be sitting just about tier 4 just because it does have Protean, it does have good enough bulk to be able to use like good sets or some decent sets. Bayonet, sadly, is useless. It can't touch dark types. It really doesn't do a lot of damage, and it's just kind of here. Tropius as well, and Chimecho, they're all kind of just bad. Like Tropius could be good if it had any kind of decent stat. Its highest stat is 99, and that's just its HP. That's not even that great. Chimecho is just kind of irrelevant. In all honesty, it's just kind of there. Huntail and Gorbis, I think, are both solid tier 5s, both good Shell Smash users. Gorbis, I think, is slightly better because the special attack options are better than Huntail's physical attack options. Also, I think Gorbis just hits harder. I think his special attack is higher. Yeah, his special attack is 114, whilst Huntail's attack is 104. It could be surprisingly good. In the right situation, I think these Pokemon are actually pretty good in tier 5. Love Disc, that's just useless. Deoxys Attack, that thing's broken. Absolutely just completely broken. Deoxys Defense and Deoxys Speed, I could definitely see in tier 1. Regular Deoxys is broken. In my opinion, Deoxys Speed should not be allowed. I think that it's just too good. Its coverage is incredible, and its speed stat, although it's now not the fastest thing, Regieleki does beat it. Regieleki only has electric type moves effectively to hit with, and Deoxys can set up with Nasty Plot. In fact, I'm just going to put it back up here. It can set up with Nasty Plot and just run through teams. In PTL, we banned Nasty Plot, and it was still really good. So yeah, we're gonna put it up in Nugas. Deoxys Defense, however, I can see being in tier 1. I don't want it to be unbanned because it's so bulky and can be really annoying to deal with. It gets all the hazards. I think I could definitely see this thing being dropped into tier 1 just to see how it goes. And honestly, it doesn't do a lot when it's there, but it's still really annoying to deal with. Grottle, I actually really like Grottle. Do I want to put it? I'm going to put it here. As a bulky grass type, it actually does have some use. I've seen quite a few people check things like Zygarde with Grottle because it's just so bulky, and its ability to keep healing itself back up with Synthesis is just really good. I think as a bulky grass in tier 5, it actually is pretty decent. It's not as good as things like Tangela, but at the same time, as an Eviolite user, I think it's pretty solid. Torterra, I love this thing. I think it's going to be really, really good this gen in tier 4. I should preface, not amazing in all the tiers, but in tier 4, I think it's going to be really good. No Hidden Power Ice to worry about this gen, so you can kind of work around that much easier. Rock Polish with Wood Hammer, Earthquake, Stone Edge tends to be all you need really to break through a lot of Pokemon that kind of can check it. You can also run it as a Stealth Rocker and run it more bulky. It can be like an Assault Vest user as well. Of course, you're not so worried about the Hidden Power Ice this gen, so Assault Vest isn't as useful, but it can still be really good. I really like Torterra as a Pokemon, and I think it's going to be better this gen, which makes me much happier. Monferno, I think, is a solid tier 5. Access to pretty much the same things that Infernape gets. Firefighting coverage, plus actually a ton of coverage around that as well. With being a fighting type, it gets with punches and stuff like that. Plus it gets Stealth Rock, it gets U-Turn. And yeah, outside of that, it's just really good. It's just a really kind of quite quick. It's quite quick. Base 81. It's not bad. 81 is pretty good for like a Stealth Rocker for a tier 5. And just, yeah, it's a really solid mon. Iron Fist, it means it gets boosted Fire Punches, Thunder Punches, things like that. Mach Punch as well. So I really like Monferno. I think it's not bad in tier 5. Infernape, I think, is our first like kind of legit tier 1. Its speed stat is really good. Its attack stats are very much usable for Choice Band or Choice Specs. You can run Nasty Plot, Swords Dance. On the utility side, you can run Slack Off and Stealth Rock, as well as moves like Endeavor. It gets priority in Mach Punch, can boost its speed and Flame Charge, as well as having great coverage. Things like Grass Knot on the special side, you get Thunder Punch on the physical side, Stone Edge, Earthquake, things like that. Infernape's really, really good. It's probably like bottom end of tier 1. Maybe top end of tier 2. You might see it drop in tier 2 for some leagues. I really like Infernape. I think it's a very good Pokemon. Prinplup definitely has its uses as a bulky water type with Stealth Rock, and I believe it gets Defog as well. I could be wrong on that, but I think it also gets Defog. I really like Prinplup as just like a solid bulky water. You're not expecting it to live the entire match, but at the same time, it can put in some decent effort, some decent work whilst it's around. Mainly as like a bulky, toxic Stealth Rock kind of user. Its attack stat isn't really usable to the extent in which you can actually do much with it, but it can be a really annoying bulky Pokemon to deal with. Empoleon is a solid tier 3. It will always be a solid tier 3. Access to Scald and Flash Cannons that stabs. It does have coverage of Ice Beam as well. And really, Stealth Rock plus Defog and a really nice typing of Water Steel. It's a unique typing as well. I think it's the only Water Steel type. I could be wrong. But off the top of my head, I think it's the only Water Steel type. Empoleon has just always been really solid in this tier, and I think it will remain to be really solid in this tier. Staraptor, I think, will be in tier 2, as it always tends to be, and it'll probably go undrafted, much like things like Bisharp and Breloom. I think Breloom is something else that tends to go undrafted. it'll probably go undrafted again because it's one of those Pokemon that's like high risk, high reward. You tend to take Stealth Rocks, then you take Brave Bird recoil, you take Double Edge recoil. You can lower your defenses with close combat, and your only like kind of reliable move is going to be the U-turn. But I think there's other sets to Staraptor that will make it better this gen. I think Heavy Duty Boots is going to be really beneficial for it. Not just because it's not taking that rocks damage, but also because it gets Intimidate, and a defensive Staraptor is actually definitely very much possible. I've run it in the past. It's not the greatest set for it by any means, but at the same time, it's definitely usable. The lack of return kind of sucks for it a little bit on the defensive side, but I've used it before to check it Infinite pretty effectively, and access to Intimidate plus relatively good bulk and Heavy Duty Boots can make it really good as defensive mon this gen. Bibarel, it's tier 5, but it's honestly, it's really good in tier 5. I think people sleep on Bibarel because it's one of the starter route Pokemon, but it's actually really good with Simple plus Curse or Swords Dance. This thing becomes an immediate threat, really difficult to take down because it has some bulk to it, and Water Normal is actually a really good typing. It gets priority in Quick Attack and Aqua Jet, and I've seen Ethan put in so much work with this thing in other leagues. I think he won like a tournament with Bibarel, and Bibarel put in a lot of work in that game. Kricketune sadly is down here. I think it does get Sticky Web, but honestly it's just terrible. Rampardos, I think it would be like bottom end tier 4. Its attack stat is absolutely ludicrous at 165. Speed is usable, especially with like a Rock Polish set or a Choice Scarf, but it does have to rely on hitting Stone Edge or Head Smash most of the time to be able to do a lot of damage. But it's still really good. I think it's a solid wall breaker in tier 4. Very rarely see it get drafted, but it's still got some use. Bastiodon, I think, is less useful, really, unless it gets body press in this gen, which hopefully it would do. It's not really got too much of a threat on the offensive side outside of Metal Sound, so you can just run it as a rocker. Wormadam, you just get in here, you're terrible. So are you. Mothim, you can go down here. Pachirisu, I think, has got some kind of use. Nuzzle sets are really annoying to deal with, but outside of that, it's not really got a lot going for it. Floatzel, we tend to see it in tier 5. It'd be probably a tier 5, but I think it's an incredible tier 5. Speed stat is really good. I think it's 105, 115. So base 115 speed plus 105 attack makes this to be really good, especially because it can't be burned due to its ability Water Veil. Like Aqua Jet, Liquidation, Ice Punch, Crunch, like it will do a lot of damage from Floatzel, especially with like a Choice Banded set or a Bulk Up set. Floatzel can be really good, especially as like a budget water type. If you maybe just have like a bulky water and you want an offensive one, you can't really go wrong with Floatzel in tier 5. It's definitely very good, and I've seen Shroomraver put in a lot of work with it. Ampom is going to stick to its tier 4 as it always does. It's got good coverage as a normal type tends to do, and a really good speed stat at 115. Base 100 is a pretty solid attack stat as well, especially with access to Technician, meaning that its fake outs are going to be doing more damage. Outside of that, I don't think there's any moves that get boosted by it, but it does also get a skill link, so you can run Tail Slap if you want to run that. But I think it's one of the Pokemon that gets a lot of hate because it's not necessarily that great as an offensive mon, but it's decent, like just doing the chip damage that it needs to. You very rarely run it as like a Wincon. It's just going to be there to be annoying to do a bit of chip damage, usually fake out and then U-turn out, and then come back in, fake out, U-turn, all that sort of stuff. It can run knockoff and all the elemental punches as well. So it's got pretty good coverage and utility options. Mismagius is going to be in tier 4 this gen, but at the same time I think it's going to be really, really good. It never really relied on the hidden power to be able to hit things because it got access to Mystical Fire, Energy Ball, Dazzling Gleam, all that sort of stuff anyway. So I don't think it necessarily needs it, and Ghost is really good this gen. The lack of Pursuit makes Mismagius immediately better, and it's got good enough speed and special attack that it can actually be a really potent like Nasty Bot user. Good Choice Scarfer, good Choice Specs user. Solid tier 4 for sure. Same with Honchkrow, that's probably going to be in tier 4. Got really good attack stats at 125 attack, 105 in special attack. Sadly, its speed has let it down a little bit at 71. Has very little in its bulk outside of HP, but it's bulky enough that it's going to be able to take a few hits. It's not necessarily going to be like defensive answer to anything, but at the same time, it can do a lot of damage with Brave Bird, with knockoff. I think it gets knockoff, pretty sure it does. Sucker Punch, and then on special side, you get Dark Pulse, Hurricane, I believe, and Heat Wave, as well as access to Nasty Plot and Bulk Up on the physical side. Punch Crow can be really, really good. Perugly, I think, has got some kind of use. It is fast enough with access to Defiant to be able to be pretty decent. No Return does kind of hurt it. I think it does get Double Edge at least, so it can do a lot of damage. Perugly can just be a little bit annoying. It's quite fast at 112 speed. Its attack stat is only 82, which kind of makes it a little bit less viable. But at the same time, it can be pretty good. Also, as a defensive Pokemon, it's not got amazing defenses, but with Thick Fat, you can kind of tailor it to check certain things. Chatot is in tier 5. Honestly, Boom Burst, Hurricane, Nasty Plot, kind of all you need to know about Chatot. Cardvine is terrible, just get down there. So can you, Lumineon, like, you're not good either. Mega is definitely going to be at least tier 3 this gen. Choice Specs with Tinted Lens does a lot of damage, especially with things like Bug Buzz, Air Slash, and it gets some kind of coverage. I'm trying to think what it gets off the top of my head. I think it gets like Giga Drain and maybe Ancient Power. If you want to be that guy, you can get the boost. Also, Speed Boost is a really scary ability. With access to heavy duty boots in this gen, I think it's definitely going to be more beneficial, especially on like a pivoting sort of set like Tinted Lens with U-Turn and boots. Could be really, really good. Not to mention it also can use Throat Spray and get the +1 with Bug Buzz, and then with Speed Boost as well is able to do a ton. Also Tinted Lens, it means basically got a choice of specs without being locked into a move. Gliscor, honestly, may well just be the best Pokemon that has not returned. It's not Ubers as well, not up here with the likes of Magcargo and Delcatty. I think this thing's going to be really, really good. If it comes back, no Hidden Power Ice makes such a difference for it. It doesn't have to worry about any of those like special attackers just randomly being able to throw off an Ice-type move and doing 50%. So you can kind of just tell what Gliscor is going to be dealing with in a game and be able to just kind of wall everything. It may well be the best defensive Pokemon in the game, or not in the game as the case may be, but it may be the best defensive Pokemon now. Poison Hill plus things like Knockoff, Roost, Taunt, Stealth Rock, Defog, gets good coverage with like Facade, Earthquake, like I said, Knockoff, Stone Edge, Ice Fang. There's plenty of things that Gliscor can do. Swords Dance as well if you want to set up. Agility if you want to boost your speed. Like Gliscor gets so many options, and also defensively it's just incredible. Like its defensive stats are really, really strong. 125 defense, and those 75 HP and 75 def doesn't seem like much when you're base 95 speed and outspeeding quite a lot of slow things. You're just able to constantly be able to wall them, and it can be really, really annoying to deal with. Even like 4 times effective moves sometimes just don't do enough damage to Gliscor. Probopass, sadly you're kind of just down here, you're just bad. Fion, you can come down here as well. Manaphy, I think for the first time might be in tier 2 this gen, just because Tailglow got taken out of the game. If they do put it back in, then it's absolutely in tier 1, it's still a big threat. But without Tailglow, it's unfortunately slower to set up, it's not as much as an instant threat. So you're probably going to look at like choice spec sets being the most prevalent. I think with things like Scald, Ice Beam, Energy Ball, and maybe U-Turn. I think it's access to Knockoff as well, but you can run Calm Mind if you want to set up. Outside of that, it's not necessarily got a ton going for it, just because it lost effectively its 2 best ways of winning games, being Z moves with Z Rain Dance and Tailglow. So Manaphy I think is still going to be really strong. It could be a really good bulky water as well, like a Rest Talk with Hydration, or Rest Rain Dance could be really good. But yeah, unfortunately Manaphy does get pretty much nerfed into the ground this gen. Darkrai, honestly this thing's broken. We did try it in PTL the season just gone without Nasty Plot, and it was still really, really good. Didn't get as many kills as people were expecting. Without Nasty Plot, it is not necessarily an amazing Pokemon, but at the same time, the amount of pressure that this thing puts into team building is just absurd. You have to look out for so many different things that it's definitely going to be an Ubers. I don't think there's any way around it. Speaking of things that are going to be Ubers, Shaman Sky, way too strong. 60% chance to flinch, plus pretty much a guarantee to lower your Spadef by 2 stages with Seed Flare. nah, that thing's going. It's too good. Regular Shaman, I think it keeps its place in tier 3. Really solid, both offensive and defensive grass type, with base 100 across the board being one of the Pixie Pokemon. Can be a good cleric, can be a potential Choice Specs user, Choice Scarf user as well. One of my favorite sets was running like a defensive expert belt set because its coverage hit everything on my opponent's team with Earth Power, Psychic, Air Slash. It has pretty good coverage and it can always do a lot more than it looks like it's going to be able to. So yeah, I think Shaman is a really solid tier 3 Pokemon, especially for like grass types in this gen where they're not necessarily as good. I think it has the coverage to keep itself relevant, as well as having really annoying like Subseed sets. Yeah, Shaman's really strong. Arceus is clearly going to be an Ubers. No, it's useless. Yeah, Arceus is just Arceus. Like, I don't think I need to go over that. Servine is basically mini Superior without Glare. So just take what I say about Superior and take it and add it to that. I think Superior is still in tier 2. And this may be a bit of a weird one because it loses hidden power, so effectively its only coverage is Dragon Pulse. But effectively all you ever needed was going to be Leaf Storm. But I think this gen, like Sub-Glare Leech Seed, is going to be so annoying to deal with. Its base speed being 113 is really, really nice. It outspeeds a lot of the major sort of threats in the game. Certainly outspeeds any bulky Pokemon. And yeah, with Glare plus Leech Seed, it can be really annoying. You can run Sub, obviously, to have a better chance of longevity. And then all you kind of need is Contrary Leaf Storm to be able to do damage. And once you get going with Superior, it'll be really difficult to stop. The Choice Scarf option as well, it's going to be really, really solid. If your opponent doesn't have a good Poison type or a good Steel type, then you can pretty much just go ahead and run Choice Scarf Superior and just spam Leaf Storm. Pignite, I think, is actually pretty decent as a bulky sort of tier 5 fire type. But I won't go too much into that. Emboar is probably going to be in tier 3. It's really good Choice Scarfer, Choice Bander. Insane wall breaking ability, like it's just crazy. It's like, what, 123 attack? That's kind of nuts. Base 100 special attack is definitely usable as well. So you can run like a mix set with Grass Knot. It's really got all it's needing with Reckless, Wild Charge, and Flare Blitz doing so much damage. Close combat is kind of nice. Actually, it doesn't get close combat. I think it just gets superpower. If it gets close combat, then it's even better. But yeah, superpower just gives it a nice fighting type move, albeit it does lower your attack. Emboar is just really, really scary. It's a terrifying one to go up against. Incredible in Trick Room, and also you can run like a Flame Charge set. And if your opponent's got a slower team, it can just run through their team. Samurott, it's got some use because I know Luxance has used it well, like really well. Got like 20 odd kills in a season with it. But it's honestly just kind of, it's a tier 5 mon. It's not that great. Its stats are average, and yeah, its move pool isn't amazing, but it does have some viability. Watchog is just down here. I think I'm reluctant to put the Simmies this high up, but I think they do actually have some use with being able to Nasty Plot and Swords Dance. Plus having pretty decent coverage, a good speed stat, and relatively good attacking stats. I think that they are actually pretty much, like, they're not useless. They got some use in tier 5, but they're certainly no better than tier 5. Zebstrika, unfortunately, is also going to be in tier 5, but it certainly has some use. I think if it got better coverage, then it would be much better. But as a fast electric type, you definitely could do worse. Like Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, Overheat does do like a good amount of damage, albeit its special attack is considerably lower, I think, than its physical attack. Yes, 20 points lower. If it got good physical options, then I think Zebstrika would be probably in tier 4. But unfortunately, it doesn't. Leavanny is a tier 5 with Sticky Web. Pretty good as like a focus slash sort of lead. And Bug, Grass, albeit as a terrible typing, it's pretty good here because you can run like a Chlorophyll Leavanny and run knockoff Swords Dance to attacks or something along those lines. And Leavanny can be pretty decent in tier 5. Swanna, unfortunately, I don't think it really does anything at all. Kind of surprised this didn't come back in Sword and Shield because considering the Swan is like a very British animal. But Swanna doesn't necessarily give all too much. Swordsbuck, I think, is a solid tier 5 because it gets like the Jirachi treatment with Nature Power plus... is Nature Power even in the game still? I don't know. If Nature Power is still in the game, then yeah, it can do the Jirachi slash Togekiss stuff with Serene Grace plus Headbutt and the paralysis from Nature Power. Not the most reliable version of it, of course, but also going to be a good chlorophyll mon as well. Double Edge plus Horn Leech and Jump Kick. It also gets access to Swords Dance, I want to say. So Swords Block can be actually pretty decent in the Sun, but outside the Sun it's kind of useless, so it's definitely a tier 5. Alomomola, I wouldn't be surprised to be seeing tier 3. Really bulky water type, quite passive, but does get access to Scald and Knockoff, which can be really annoying to deal with. Plus it gets Wish Pass, and Wish Pass with its 165 HP stat means that a lot of things are going to be healed back up to roughly full from a Wish Pass. Plus Regenerator means that it can kind of do it for free as well. It can keep coming in, keep Wish Passing. Really annoying Pokemon to deal with. Electric, honestly, is probably just down here. It does have no weaknesses because of Levitate and being Electric type. Pretty bulky as well, but I think it's probably just... Actually, you know what? I'm going to put up one. I think it's better than some of these Pokemon here. It's not necessarily incredible, but it's going to be pretty solid. Electros, no, I'm going to put it back down. I'm putting it back down. Electros is just a better version of Electric, obviously, with no direct weaknesses outside of Mold Breaker Pokemon, and the ability to be like Gravity or Smackdown. No weaknesses is really nice because you can run like Assault Vest, and it's fairly bulky with 85 HP and 80 in both defenses. Its attacking stats are very much usable as well. It gets access to Drain Punch and Giga Drain, which makes it even better as an Assault Vest user. The only downside to Electros really is its speed stat being at base 50. That really sucks because you tend to want your electric type to be faster, but if you've got a pretty quick team as it is and just want like a bulkier electric type, then Electros is actually really cool. I really like it. Meloetta I think is going to be a solid tier 3 this gen. That's tier 4. Solid tier 3. Access to Hyper Voice and I believe Relic Song might also be boosted by Throat Spray. Means that it can get a +1 special attack, plus access to Calm Mind. Also can be Relic Song and change it to a normal fighting type, which can also be really difficult to deal with, especially if you prep for a normal psychic type. It kind of effectively means that you've got to prep for 2 mons in one, albeit it has to waste a move slot on a physical attacker with a special move. Meloetta can still be really good. It's got decent coverage and can be really bulky as well, with like base 124 on a special defense, base 128 special defense, 128 in special attack and 90 speed is pretty good as an offensive mon as well. So I think Meloetta is a solid tier 3. I don't think it's necessarily like toward the top end, but it's certainly pretty good. Quilladin, I like it as a bulky grass type. Gets access to Spike as well, which is really handy. It's just a solid defensive grass type. I think Chesnaught is probably in tier 3 this gen. The removal of Hidden Power Flying really benefits it. Again, you can just kind of dedicate it to checking certain physical things on your opponent's team. Special defense is kind of usable as well at 75. It's actually more specially defensive than Gliscor, and Gliscor can always be EV to live stuff. So yeah, it's also really good on the physical side of base 107 on its attack. Means that it can actually use like, I've seen Belly Drum Salix sets before. I've seen like Choice Banded sets put in a lot of work. It can definitely do a lot. And Chesnaught I think is going to be a really good Pokemon this gen. Grass and Fighting tends to be pretty good coverage. Delphox I think is better this gen because of Heavy Duty Boots. Choice Scarf and Choice Spec sets are still going to be very much possible. Gets decent coverage for a fire type, unlike Typhlosion. Gets access to things like Dazzling Gleam. I think it gets access to Energy Ball, I could be wrong. But definitely gets access to Shadow Ball as well. So it has some coverage as well as a Stab, Psychic and Fire. Outside of that, it can learn things like Trick and Will-O-Wisp. It can be quite handy as like utility Pokemon, but not necessarily amazing. Frogadier I think is always going to be a tier 5, but again it's pretty solid with Protean. It's able to change its typing. It lacks the coverage that Greninja has, but it's still pretty good. Toxic Spikes are always going to be handy. I believe it doesn't get spikes itself, it just gets Toxic Spikes. Still pretty good. Pretty decent speed stat at 97. 83 is a pretty usable special attack stat as well. As a tier 5, it has a lot of utility and it's still pretty scary offensively just because of its Protean. Greninja, firstly I'm going to go, this is going to be Protean. Protean is too strong. I think Ash Greninja is still going to be too strong as well this gen. But Torrent Greninja, honestly, I think it's going to be a really solid tier 3. I think it's going to be like top end of tier 3. Some people might be put it in tier 2, but I think without Z moves, it really lacks the offensive kind of like oomph to be able to actually break through a lot of things. But its utility with Toxic Spikes and Spikes, Taunt is really good. It gets tons of coverage. which, albeit doesn't get the benefit of the Protean ability, it's still got enough coverage in my opinion, plus the ability to U-turn out, priority in Water Shuriken. It's a really good mon. I very much enjoy using Greninja. Don't be surprised at all to see it in tier 2. Actually, you know what, looking at things that are in this tier already, I'm going to put it in tier 2. I think it's better than these. Speed stat is really good, its special attack and attack are both usable. Yeah, I think Greninja is probably up there. Next up, we've got Vivillon, and I think Vivillon's a tier 5. It doesn't have Sticky Web like Masquerain does, but it does have Quiver Dance and Bug Flying coverage, which are pretty solid. Plus, Heavy Duty Boots in this gen makes it slightly better. Pyroar, probably going to be in tier 5, but I could definitely see it in tier 4. I'm going to put it in tier 5 for now. I think it could possibly reach tier 4 because the Throat Spray plus Throat Spray. My god, I've been speaking too much. Throat Spray plus Hyper Voice also gets access to like Dark Pulse and obviously fire moves. Outside of that, its coverage is limited outside of like Solar Beam and the Sun, and it's kind of just got bad abilities. Unnerve is alright, but Moxie is just completely useless unless you're going to be that guy in running physical Pyro. Florges, I think, is going to be really solid this gen. I think it's going to be another Pokemon that benefits the Heavy Duty Boots because it's not going to be taking that entry hazards. Wish Pass is always going to be really nice. It's a really, really strong Cleric. It's one of his best options. Its offensive move pool is not amazing, but that could be fixed in Gen 8 if it was to come out. Its special defense is so good that you really just don't even need to invest. It's 150 force per def. You can invest it all in physical defense to make it mixed bulk, and it's actually really difficult to take down. It gets access to defog as well, so it's a good hazard remover on top of that, especially with the Heavy Duty Boots this gen. So I think it's really solid in tier 3. Go-Go, sadly, I think it's tier 5, basically useless. Yeah, there's not a lot ready to go over with it. Same with Furfrou. I think that's pretty terrible. Hooper Unbound, that's a tier 1. That will always be tier 1. It's not broken enough that it should be in Ubers, but at the same time, it's really, really powerful. It's got like base 170 attack, I think, and like 130 special attack. Just off the top of my head, I think that's right, and then base 80 speed, which is definitely very usable with a Choice Scarf. You can run a Choice Bandage, Choice Specs, gets tons of coverage on both sides. Plus, it's also really specially bulky. Its only real downside is its physical defense and its ×4 weakness to U-turn. But yeah, it can be a really, really scary mon to go up against. If you lose your checks to it, then it's just going to blow holes through your team. Hyperspace Fury just does so much damage to everything. I've used this before and I loved using it. It was really, really good. It's definitely a strong mon. Regular Hooper, I think, still sits in tier 3. I think it's good specially attacking mon. Good coverage as well. It's access to Nasty Plot, I want to say. Pretty sure he gets access to Nasty Plot. Yeah, Hooper is really good. Doesn't have the ×4 weakness to U-turn as well, but is ×4 weak to knockoff and to ghost types as well. But Hooper is still really good. It's got a decent enough speed stat to be able to be a good Choice Scarfer. Has a really good special defense, as well as a really good special attack and a usable attack stat as well. I think it's a pretty good tier 3. Toucannon, honestly, is tier 5. It doesn't really do a lot. I think Gumshoos is probably down here as well. I like Gumshoos' abilities, and I think it can actually have some use, but until put into practice, I don't believe it. Crabominable, I will stand by this. It actually has some use. Its dual stabs are really good, albeit it's incredibly slow and incredibly frail in terms of its typing. Its stats are actually not too bad across the board. Like, it's not bulky, but it's not like frail as well. It's mainly its typing that really lets it down on that. But 132 attack stat with access to Iron Fist and Hypercutter, I think it's definitely got some use, especially in Trick Room. I think Crabominable could be really good. Oricorio, I think, down here, unfortunately. Hurricane Revelation Dance, really nice, as well as having 4 types. You know what, I'm actually going to put it up there. It has 4 types, as well as having access to Defog, gets U-turn. Outside of that, it really doesn't get a whole lot. Minior, I think, is a solid tier 4. Shell Smash with Rock Move plus Acrobatics. Really, really nice. Access to Earthquake as well, I think, which is weird that this gets Earthquake, but like Entei doesn't. Yeah. Minior can be really, really threatening, but at the same time, I think it just kind of lacks a little bit power to be able to actually break through things, and tends to maybe pick up 1 kill in a game, and then we'll just get picked off by something else afterwards. Kamala, I think, is also a solid tier 4. Rapid Spin buff in this gen kind of helps it a little bit. but also you can run Choice Band with Sleep Talk Last Resort, and just gets some kind of pretty good coverage as well. I think it's Play Rough, Wood Hammer, Drain Punch, stuff like that. So Komala definitely has its uses. I think it's a pretty good Assault Vest user as well, and does benefit from Rapid Spin buff this gen. And then Bruxish, I think, is probably going to be in tier 4. It's just tier 5. I think it's tier 5. Sadly, it's got a good attack stat at 105, decent speed at 92. Water Psychic is a nice typing as well, and actually 2 really good abilities in Dazzling and Strongjaw. It just doesn't necessarily do enough. I want to see Bruxish put him work in the Draft League, but to this point, I've not really seen enough. I think we'll probably see it in tier 5, maybe in tier 4, like it's top end of tier 5 for sure. But that's going to be it. That's our list. I will probably have a look at some of these Pokemon, like I said, midway through, around the Ampharos area. I might have a look at some of these and how to improve them, what moves realistically maybe they'll get in the next gen. But I think from just looking at this, there's quite a lot of, competitively wise, we're not missing out on a lot. Obviously, Infinite, Gliscor, and Hooper are really, really big threats that we're missing out on. We've got some really good Pokemon in tier 2 and tier 3. Some that I'm not too worried if they come back, like a Lobomola, but that's just because they're bulky and annoying to face. But yeah, it looks like a lot of Pokemon that haven't come back competitively aren't the most viable. So people who complain about Draft League not having all the Pokemon, honestly, I don't think that that's necessarily the biggest deal. But it'd be nice to get some of these back, just because they're some of my favorite Pokemon in general, but Draft League Pokemon as well. So yeah, if you disagree with me, then please leave a comment down in the description below. I'm sure there's a lot of opinion on these Pokemon. Some people think that some things are really, really good. Some others think that they're terrible. So really it comes down to opinion, and I'd love to hear what you had to say. So yeah, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. And until the next one, have a great day, guys. Peace.